Here is our demonstration on the color wheel and color mixing. Today we're going to be using one of the best art tools available to mankind, and those are your fingers. We're just going to do a little bit of finger painting today just to do a little bit of color mixing, get used to it, but of course when you start working on your final painting you'll be able to use a paintbrush. That way you can get more precise shapes and lines and blending and all that good stuff. But today we're just going to use our fingers because it's fun and also because it means less materials that we have to clean up. So less time we have to clean up, the more time we have to actually paint. Okay? So this is a color wheel. Some of you may have seen it before, some of you may not. Anytime you are filling in a color wheel, and this is something that we will do again and again and review again and again, the first thing you always do is start out with these three circles, the ones that have the really bolded outline to it. And in these three circles, we are going to fill in the primary colors. It may have been a long time since you've heard those words. You may not remember what the primary colors are, so we will review that. The primary colors are the colors in the rainbow that cannot be mixed. No matter what you do with the primary colors, you either have them or you don't. Okay, so here are our primary colors. This over here. There we go. Alright, our primary colors are red, blue, and yellow. It doesn't matter what you do. If you don't already have red, blue, and yellow, there's no two colors you can mix to get them. The primary colors are also special because as long as you have red, yellow, and blue, you can always mix any other color that you want. So the first thing we're going to do is use our finger. Like I said, don't need a lot. But we're going to use our finger just to fill in each one of those primary color circles. Once you get done with one color, you're going to use your paper towel to wipe off your finger really good. As long as you're careful, you shouldn't need a whole lot of paper towel, and we shouldn't need to wash our hands at the end of class. Okay, so I've got my first primary color, yellow. Move down to my next really big circle, and I'll put my blue in this one. That's my second primary color. Once again, use my paper towel, wipe off my finger. Alright, and finally my last one is red. So let me fill that in. Doesn't take a whole lot of paint, so you don't have to go overboard. And I know this red, when you put it on there, it's going to look a little light. That's just because it's kind of a thin color. But as we continue to blend more colors with it, it's going to be a little bit thicker. Alright, so let's clean off that finger really good. Make sure that there's not any more paint. It might still have a tint of pink to it, but you're just going to have to live with that until you get to a restroom and can clean it off really well with some soap. Okay, so now we have these other circles. These are for our secondary colors. And I used arrows to help you remember which color goes where. Okay? I've got two arrows here, one coming from the blue circle and one coming from the yellow circle. So in this circle, we're going to mix blue and yellow and see what happens. You may already know what color we get, but hey, experimenting is always fun. I'm going to start out with yellow, because blue is the stronger color. So anytime you use blue, you really just want to use a little bit of it. Okay? So a lot of yellow, and then I'm going to get just a tiny, tiny bit of blue. Let's start with that, because we can always add to it if we need to. And as you can see, when I mix a lot of yellow with just a little bit of blue, I get a nice grass green color. Okay? Wipe that finger off. We want to get it cleaned off well. Now we move on to the next one. Down here we have an arrow pointing from the blue circle and the red circle. So we're going to start with red, because once again blue is a really strong color. So we're going to start with red and get just a tiny dot of blue just like we did before. And when we mix those together, you'll see that it gives us a nice pretty purple. And if yours is a little too dark, if you mix yours and you realize that your purple is just a little bit too dark and you can barely see the purple, it almost just looks like the same color of blue, just try adding more red. So anytime your purple comes out too dark, try adding more red and it'll probably look a little better. Alright, whoops, I forgot to turn that one around. Alright, imagine that this arrow is turned around pointing up here. Okay, so our last one, by default, we're taking yellow and red, mixing them together. This time, we'll start with yellow and get just a little bit of red. And when we mix those together, you'll see that that gives us a really nice color of orange, okay? So anytime from here on out that you are working on a painting project, you will only be given the colors yellow, blue, and red, our primary colors. And if you need green, orange, or purple, you will be expected to color it or to mix it on your own. Now let's move on to the bottom of the worksheet, which is tints and shades. These are two new words that you may or may not be familiar with. The word tint means a lighter color. So if I tell you I want you to mix a tint of yellow, that means I want you to mix a really light yellow. And if I say I want you to mix a shade of blue, that means I want you to mix a really dark blue. Pretty easy to remember if you can remember that in the shade, if you're in the shade of a tree, that it's going to be darker in the shade of a tree than it is anywhere else. If you can remember those types of things, then you ought to be able to remember the difference between a tint and a shade. So choose whichever the primary colors you like the best, red, yellow, or blue, and we're going to put the pure color right here in the middle. I'm going to do red. I like red. So I'm going to do just a nice pure red right here in the middle. And then in these two squares, I'm going to try to mix darker and darker shades of red. And in these, I'm going to try to mix lighter and lighter shades of red. Okay, so let's start with my tints. Alright, I'm going to start right here with a little bit of red again. And then I'm going to take my white, and I'm just going to mix that right on top of it. And as you can see, when you mix red and white, you get pink. Okay, so I've got my pure red, now I've got a lighter tint of red, and now in my lightest one, I'm not even going to clean off my finger, I'm not even going to add any more red to it. I'm going to use mostly white, and just pick up some white with my finger, so that when you look at it, this almost looks the same white of the paper, but it still has just a little tint of red to it. Okay, so that's all you have to do to mix a tint. Let's come over here and mix my shades, but I definitely need to make sure that I clean off my finger, because when you're mixing a shade of a color, you definitely don't want any white. Same process. I'll pick up some red, start with some red on my square, get a little bit more than that. And black is a very, very strong color, so it only takes a tiny bit of black to start darkening up this color. Okay? That might even be a little too much. If it is too much, you can kind of dab it off until you barely have any black on your finger. With black, you can always remember that you can add to, but you can't really take away. So it's better to start with just a little bit, and then maybe even go over it with some more red, because we still want it to be red. We don't want it to be black. We still want it to be red, but we want it to be a darker shade of red. And then I'll do the same thing over here. Start off with my red, and then pick up some of that leftover black. And over here I'm going to try to make an even darker shade of red than I have right here, but I still want it to read as red. And that might be kind of hard to see on the video because you've got the glare of the lights, but I'll have it hanging up on the bulletin board in class so that you can see that this square that I'm working in right now, my darkest one, truly does have a shade of red and a little tint of red, but it is pretty dark, and it is probably the darkest I'm going to be able to get without going black. Okay, so now we've completed the color wheel, and now we've completed mixing shades of red and tints of red.